Dharoking at Nightmare Zone. This is one of the best melee training methods in the game. That being said, you have a lot of options for how you can actually set up your training session, and it isn't exactly clear how you can get the most out of a 1-hour session. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tryhard Casual, and I would like to share with you what I learned while I was Dharoking at Nightmare Zone. Basically, when I started Dharoking, I just cared about leveling up my melee stats, so this guide will be tailored more towards better XP rates rather than points per hour. I'll also make a few assumptions, like you know what Nightmare Zone is, and you at least have a few Nightmare Zone points saved up. This is so I can speed up the video a little bit. But very quickly, I wanted to acknowledge the fact that I am using RuneLite instead of the regular client. I typically don't like to use anything but the vanilla RuneScape client, but using RuneLite makes it much easier to track XP rates, and to keep an eye on your potion timers. That being said, it's not necessary whatsoever, and everything in the guide can be done with ease on the vanilla client. So with that out of the way, let us begin. Let's talk about my personal recommendations I have for you if you're thinking about Dharoking, starting with combat stats. While doing my research, most of what I came across was that you want to have a bare minimal of somewhere between 90 to 92 hit points. Most other training methods will yield a better experience rate per hour until you have higher hit points, because the Dharok set drastically increases the damage you deal based on your missing hit points. These were my personal stats when I first started Dharoking, and I was getting XP rates of around 100k per hour. So actually getting to the Nightmare Zone is quite easy. Using the Nightmare Zone minigame teleport is the fastest way there. For some reason, if that isn't available to you, then you can use a fairy ring and walk a little bit southeast. A Yanil house teleport will take you right inside the city, or a dueling ring to Castle Wars and then walking east will work too. Beyond your stats for Dharoking, you actually have to complete a minimal of 5 quests on this list to have access to Nightmare Zone. You can get away with any of the quests highlighted now, but I would personally recommend these 5 quests because the bosses you unlock from them are better for experience rates. But I will go over boss selection more in detail later. On top of that, for doing a hard customizable rumble at Nightmare Zone, you'll need to pay 26k per entry. If you have completed every quest in the game, then you'll only need to pay 16k. Your money can be deposited into a coffer located there. You will also need either a Dwarven Rock Cake or a Locator Orb to get your health down to 1 for Dharoking. The subquest Freeing the Mountain Dwarf from Recipe for Disaster will give you the Rock Cake, and Dragon Slayer 2 will give you the Locator Orb. With all of that done, we can nicely transition into what gear we're going to be bringing. Obviously you want to bring the full Dharok set, but you still have half of your gear slots to think about. I'll put a few images on screen for the best gear you can take, what I have access to on my account, some mid-level options, and then also budget options if you don't have a lot of cash to spend or gear unlocked yet. We also have our inventory to talk about. My inventory typically looks like this, and I'll go over it from top to bottom. In the Nightmare Zone, 4 power-ups can spawn. For the purposes of this guide, the only one we care about is Power Surge because it can increase your experience per hour. For this reason, we are bringing spec equipment to swap into when it spawns. The best spec weapon to bring would be Dragon Claws, but a cheaper alternative option is a Granite Maul ore. As for the other 3 pieces, Dharok armor actually doesn't increase your melee strength bonus at all, so bring anything with melee strength on it, and that will increase the damage you do when you're speccing during a Power Surge. We also have Overload and Absorption potions in our inventory. Overload potions boost your combat stats to the max for 5 minutes, and Absorption potions prevent you from taking damage from the bosses in the encounter. You can purchase both of them from Dominic Onion's chest with Nightmare Zone points. 3 Overload potions equal 1 hour of boosted stats, so decide how many hours you think you'll want to do, and then fill up the rest of your inventory slots with Absorption potions. Just be sure to leave 1 slot open for your Rock Cake or your Locator Orb. You may have also noticed a Bone Crusher in my inventory. That's just something I like to personally bring for a very tiny amount of prayer XP. So that was all a lot of information. Let me take you through a typical run from the start and show you how it all comes together. Starting off, you'll want to make sure you have enough money in the coffer to pay for a round. You want to talk to Dominic and have him set up a hard customizable rumble. After that, make your way over to the kegs and fill up on how many Overload and Absorption potions you need. You'll also want to set up your quick prayers to have rapid heal selected, but I'll talk about that when we're actually in the dream. After that, we can now go over to the Dream Potion and set up our boss picks. I did some research on my own and looked at monsters that had high hit points, low defense, and only attacked with melee since that made the most sense for maximizing XP gains. I also noticed on the wiki that a few bosses have increased experience gained for when you attack them. I would say if nothing else, just make sure your boss picks only attack with melee so you're not running all over the place. Looking at the wiki is a great place to see what you should use based on what you have access to. Also, you could add more than 5 bosses to increase your points per hour, but this will lower your combat experience rates. The bosses I personally came up with were Count Draenor, Sand Snake, Khazard Warlord, Ice Troll King, and Moss Giant. If you feel like getting technical, I'll leave a link to a RuneScape DPS calculator down below. If we punch in our stats and gear and then choose which bosses we'll add, we can see that picking Dad and Arg would actually be better over 2 of our other options in terms of estimated experience gained per hour. Regardless of that fact, I didn't pick Arg because he can attack with ranged, and I didn't pick Dad because he can knock you back with his attacks. Both of these mechanics can slow your XP per hour even though it looks better on paper. I personally just find it a little annoying to deal with. Once we have our bosses selected, we can then enter the Dream. To start off, I'll begin to lower my health by guzzling and eating the rock cake until my health drops down to 51. I'll make sure to use 1 or 2 absorption potions and sip 1 dose of overload, which will take my health all the way down to 1. As soon as the bosses start spawning, you really only have 3 mechanics to think about. Your most consistent task is to keep your health at 1. Every single minute in RuneScape, your HP will regenerate by 1. Turning the prayer Rapid Heal on and off will reset this timer and keep you at 1 HP. When I'm not using Runelight, I just kind of randomly flick my quick prayers on and off since you're not able to see the timer for your HP regeneration. If you forget to flick your prayers and your health goes up to 2, then you can guzzle your rock cake or use your locator orb and get back down to 1, without taking any absorption charges or killing yourself by accident. Keeping your health at 1 ensures your Dharok damage is as high as it can be, and also that the bosses will only be hitting you for 1s whenever they connect with an attack, which will extend your absorption potions by a fair margin. The second thing you'll have to be aware of is keeping your potion charges up at all times. When not using Runelight, you can always see how many absorption charges you have on screen, but you will not be able to see your overload timer. I would recommend listening for the audio cue when it expires, or you might just notice that your health is back up to 51. So be sure to use an overload potion as soon as the previous one expires. And lastly, you'll want to be on the lookout for when a power surge spawns. I'll run over to it and swap to my spec gear in the process. After you obtain the power up, you can simply smash that spec bar and watch the XP numbers fly. While that is technically all you'll need to do for a successful Dharok session, I do have 3 pro tips for the players that want to be a little bit more involved. I think the most obvious improvement you can make to this method is to flick Piety with your attacks. It increases your XP per hour quite a bit, but it makes it way more click intensive. Looking back at the DPS calculator, you could prioritize which boss to attack and manually click on which one will give you the most experience. This will also speed up your auto-retaliate delay between kills. And finally, you can actively position your character to be attacked by as few bosses as possible. This will help keep your absorption charges up longer. The most effortless way to do this is to stand in a corner or next to a wall. And that is basically going to be it for this Dharoking guide. It's really not that hard whatsoever, and it can provide some nice XP rates provided you have the appropriate requirements to start. I actually really want to make a video comparing a few melee training methods soon, but I'm not exactly sure when I'll officially start on it. Anyway, I recently passed over 500 subs on the channel, and I'm like absolutely beaming right now. I could not be happier. So if you enjoyed the video or you want to see more content like this, then throwing a sub or a like my way would honestly mean the world to me. It just completely fuels my motivation to put stuff out more often and then work harder on the stuff I do put out. But that is all for now, guys. I will see you in the next one, and I hope you have a wonderful day.